Welcome to the Finding the Magic podcast, where books come alive. I'm Tricia Copeland, a fiction author and host of this show. If you love books, finding great reads, and hearing about the story behind the story directly from the authors, this is the place for you. Whether you like fantasy, science fiction, dystopian, or romance titles, I think you'll find something to love in my playlist. Listen in to discover something magical about a book or two today. Welcome, Bjorn.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, really good. Just busy. I'm sure you know the feeling.
Yes, today we have Bjorn Leesson. So I've been on your release events, and I think I've had you on the show before, but remind me, what is the genre here? They're fantasies, right?
Yes, it's a little bit of a mix of several actually, but the overarching main genre that seems to fit the best is historical fiction fantasy, but it does
Okay.
touch on a lot of stuff. But yeah, that's the main one.
Okay. Yeah, I thought so. And I was like, well, but they might just be historical. And I get it wrong here.
No, it's historically driven, but it's there's a lot of fantastical elements added. There's supernatural elements, uh psychological thriller, all kinds of stuff. It's a little mashup of a lot of things, but yeah, it's fun to write.
Fun. So the name of the series is Outside of Thalsparr, and is it a little bit of a Viking inspired story then?
Yeah, the overarching, I guess if you want to say there's a overarching cultural influence, it's the Norse era, exploration era, Viking era.
Okay.
The protagonist is Norse herself. Well, she's half Norse. She identifies as Norse. She was raised in Scandinavia in 800s, but she is half Moor also. So she's not your stereotypical Viking. One, she's a female warrior, which is something now we accept as being probably factual. In fact, a lot of uh, historical and archaeological discoveries prove that it probably, that it is true. Maybe we're still trying to discover the scale of it, but yeah, females were warriors. They were leaders of warriors, and basically they did a lot of the same things the men did in that culture at the time. So, but added to that, I wanted to make her a little more interesting is she's half Northern African and half Norse. So her father was from Northern Africa and her mother was from Norway. So you get this strange, I say strange looking, she's very non-typical looking Viking female. She's got dark skin, dark hair, wild green eyes. She's just not what you picture when you think of a Viking, right?
Right.
Yeah, and then I added in had to throw in some supernatural powers. So she's got that. She's got a quirky personality. She's just very off the wall with some of the things she does and says. And but she's very endearing and she gathers up allies along the way, of course.
Fun. And the sixth book is coming out, Rune of Spirits is coming out in September, correct?
Yep, September 16th. That'll be book
Fun.
six.
Well, okay, so can you give me a little overview of the plot of each of the books?
Sure, I sure can. The way I wrote it was kind of structured. It's not chronologically in order necessarily, and it's not a narrow scope. It's a very broad and pretty complicated storyline, but not complicated in a bad way. It's just as deep. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of characters to follow. Books 1, 2, and 3, which in order would be Runes of the Dokkrsdottir, Runes of Renewal, and Rune of Destiny. Those are the ones that focus primarily on Mariel's direct involvement in her destiny, which is to save the living world from the dark. She's heavily, this is the meat, I call it the meaty core of the story. This is where all the most of the action happens. So these three books are heavy with action, and they're heavily focused on Mariel, but we do get a lot of other characters introduced along the way. And that becomes important later because after book 3, we start branching out. Okay, the main part of the story is over, but we'll look at all this stuff that had to feed into that main story even happening, because it like I say, this happens over a 1200-year span. So Mariel doesn't, I'll just throw a spoiler out there. She doesn't stay in the Viking age. She was born and raised in the Viking age, but she ends up in 1891 Montana, and she ends up in World War II. And I won't give
Oh,
away how it happens, but yes, it does
huh.
happen.
That
She
is an interesting twist.
and she ends up fighting alongside of her descendants, which is another one of my big things of, aside from history, a big interest of mine is genealogy. And when you're talking about 30 to 40 generations between Mariel and her children's children and on, we end up with a quite diverse cast. We end up with freed slaves from the South. We end up with Native Americans, and we end up with other Europeans that are all her descendants. You know, over the 30 generations, that's plenty of time for the genetics to spread out. So it gives you a very diverse cast of her she calls them her grandchildren. Of course, they're 40th grandchildren, but yeah, so it's just a very encompassing story. And after book 3, we start going into the backgrounds of some of these characters that are introduced. In book 6, for example, the one that's coming out in September, we get to what I think is going to be a very exciting character, a very exciting release that I enjoyed writing, and that's Josephine Peel. And we find out her background, and you come to find out she's okay. If you want to say characters are in a column of good guy or bad guy, she's in the good guy column, but she does not do good things.
Mm.
She's a very, very dark character, does a lot of stuff, but she has a role to play, and she does play it, and it all feeds into Mariel's being successful at saving the world in book 3. So it was a fascinating way to write it, and I hope people like it. It seems like people do enjoy it. The way it's written, it's just not black and white in a straight line. It's very curvy, a lot of twists and turns, and a lot of lots of characters and lots of story arcs. It's not just one thing, so it's a very big universe.
It's amazing. Yeah, I mean, as human history is
Oh,
meandering
exactly.
too, right?
And
Um,
I'm actually glad you said that, because when I sat down to write this, when I discovered it wasn't going to be a short story, that this was going to be a lot of novels, which wasn't what it was supposed to be to begin with, but it blew up and took over. The story took over. It took me over, and I started writing it. But I wanted to shoot for realism. It is a fantasy. There's a lot of fantastical elements in it. There's supernatural powers. There's glimpses of life beyond, past death, what's past death. And Mariel does fight on both sides. She's fighting in the other world and in the living world at some points in the story. With descendants that have passed hundreds of years ago. She's fighting with them on her side. So I mean, there's a lot of fantastical elements. But what I wanted to do was really, really focus on making it seem realistic. It's still a fantasy story, but you can almost envision this really happening in front of you, and you feel like you're there. It's immersive. I'd go a lot. There's a lot of detail involved to kind of build the world around it, so you can almost watch it on TV, so to speak, while you're reading
right.
it. And
Yeah.
so when you mentioned realism, that's exactly what I was shooting for.
Yeah, because I mean, it sounds like one of those epic fantasies that you're just gonna like dive into and live in that world.
Oh, it's a commitment. Though that's one thing I kind of have to make clear to the reader. If you're looking for something quick and very direct, this probably isn't for you. It's a commitment. There's a lot of threads in it, and they all connect. And that's what I wanted to go for, was the world's not black and white. Stories are rarely ever just that simple. There's a lot of threads that wind together, and all these interesting characters are those threads. So
Yeah, I'm enthralled because there's several things that have captured like me and my husband watch types of shows we watch, which are Viking shows. For some reason, we like all of those, and then we like the westerns too. So I'm like, oh, this has everything in it. And
it, it
I like
actually
supernatural, so
It actually kind of does. You said Western. Josephine, this is the book coming up in
right,
September.
yeah.
Josephine ends up in Montana, and in 7, I'll just throw it out there, she ends up in Nevada. And there is a Wild West-esque feel to those, because she ends up on the frontier, and she ends up having to live and do the things she does, which I won't give away, but they're not all of them are wholesome. She does some things on the frontier, but it's all in the service of making Mariel successful, because
Right.
her story happens before Mariel's. So
Oh, interesting. So is Mariel, do all her descendants also get some of her powers?
In book 3, she goes back. Uh, she's not killed per se, but she goes back to the other side, crosses the veil, and goes back to the spirit world because she has to do something. She has to battle there, and she leaves her descendants in the living world to handle this side. So there's two battles, mirroring battles going on at the same time, and it kind of harkens back a little bit because it is mentioned in one of the earlier books, the biblical verse, what is in heaven and shall it be on earth, or I probably quoted that wrong, but you
Right. Yeah.
understand
Yeah.
what I'm
You're
saying.
close. Yeah.
So they that's very similar to what's going on in this story. There's battles that are mirroring each other going on both sides of the veil, and Mariel kind of has to go back and forth at times. But when in book 2, when she goes back with the Valkyrie that takes her back through the portal to the other side, I don't want to go into like gross mechanical detail about it, but her power fragments and flies out, so to speak, across space and time when she passes through. And some of that power embeds in some of her descendants, and they receive watered down versions. Now Mariel's very powerful, and that's part of her struggle, is her internal power can be very destructive, and she has to learn to control it. It's not like an on and off switch for her. It can really hurt a lot of people that she doesn't mean to with this power. But when her descendants receive it, they can use it, but it's a very watered down version, and it's a lot easier for them to control. What they don't ever find out up till this point in the series is how many are there and where are they, because some of her descendants are scientists, and they've discovered, okay, this power can have inhabited any of her descendants, and it has to be her descendants from the Viking Age up till the modern time, which in their time was 1944, a World War II era. So there's no telling how many, or at what point in history these people could exist.
Interesting.
That's another little twist in the story.
So you're already planning out book 7. Have you planned out like beyond that? Do you know where it's going? Like,
Oh yeah. Oh,
do you know
I
where
already
this
do.
is? Do you know the end? Do you know what the end's
Oh
going
yeah.
to be?
Oh yeah.
Okay. And what
Books.
book will that be in?
Well, book 7's already written. It's already been edited. All it needs is book design and release, and that'll be early next year. Book 8 I've already written. It's in the editor's hands now, and that'll be the final book in the main
Okay.
series. And that brings another character named Alexandria Leopoldine Evelyn Ziamara Hustergraben. Yes, that's her
Oh.
name. They call her Alex. Alex, and she's another very interesting character that's completely different than the rest of them. And she's not a descendant of Mariel, but she has an important part to play as well. But that'll be the final book in the main series. Joe, I fell in love with writing Josephine so much that the spinoff I mentioned earlier, the first one is going to be called Cameron, and it's going to be Josephine's story.
Oh,
So
okay.
it'll be mostly detached from Mariel's story. It'll be solely Josephine's background when she was in 1860s New York, working for her father's family company, which is pretty much, imagine mafia in the 1860s, and that's what her family was. So that gives you an idea kind of where she's coming from with her background, which is why she does the things she does. So
Interesting. So you said you loved history and genealogy. How many hours do you research for all of these books?
well, that's the fun part, is I've always researched history since I was, in school, grade school and all. So a lot of it's just in my head. I just made it into a story. I didn't
Oh,
have to
okay.
really go into
Yeah.
detail with researching. Now I do freshen up on some things I might have forgotten or maybe haven't really been exposed to, and I want to inject it into story. So I'll go and start poking around. But I would say, I mean, I guess the short answer would be the research has been throughout my life, and now I have somewhere to use it. So it's kind of really convenient for me.
Right. And it sounds like these books are coming out super fast too.
About every 4 months, I've been writing
Oh,
one. So
wow. Wow.
I just really, really, but dug in, and it stayed with me. So I just wanted to keep going while it's still in my head.
Yeah, I know. You love a character and you just want to keep writing them. So I'm So my To Be a Fae that was released was the last book in the series. So I'm sort of in that like aftermath of what do I do now with my life, right?
Right.
Now that I don't have these characters to talk to all the time, I need new ones.
Oh, but there's always spinoffs.
Oh yes, yes, there will be. So, well, fun. Yeah, you have created an amazing world here. What do you feel like your normal reader is? Like, what do they look like, or are they kind of across the board?
I would have to think across the board. I think there is the overarching Norse kind of theme to it, like the book covers are kind of Norse-esque looking. Now there's hints that they're not all in the Norse era because you got battleships and airplanes off the front of some of them. It give you hints that okay, there's must be Vikings in this, but not necessarily in their time. But I think anyone that's interested, anybody that finds supernatural elements in a Viking with a Viking character would be very interested. But I did strive, like I say, I did strive to make it kind of real life in addition to fantasy. So what is real life? Real life's everything, right? It encompasses all genres and all interests. So I kind of sprinkled a little bit of everything I know into it. And I think I know it's kind of cliche to say there's something for everybody, but I really do think for most people, not every single genre, but for most people, there's something in there that would definitely pique their interest.
Right. So how did you come up with why did you decide to make it a like mainly female main character based?
I think I just always I don't know why, but I've always been I always root for the badass female in movies, books. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because our lizard brains say that only men are warriors, and I like an underdog. So you throw a female in there with a sword, and she's kicking ass left and right. I like that. I think it's a good story. But Marilyn specifically was because of the discovery of a Viking burial mound that they always assumed was a male Viking chief. But then when they did the further exploration, a scientific exploration on the remains, they found out, oops, this wasn't a male, this was a female. But she had the grave goods. I mean, she was a highly respected leader of warriors. This was a woman that kicked ass and led troops, So this was a very highly respected position in the Viking age. So that sparked burial right off. And then I just kind of continue with the same thing, the same theme with the strong female characters. Ingrid is a major supporting character, and she's the focus of book 4. She has her own story as well. Ingrid Stonesplitter. She's Mariel's best friend and ally in the Viking age. But she's kind of the opposite of Mariel in a way. She's Mariel's, normal height, a little athletic and but fairly normal body build. But Ingrid is not. She is 6'6" and built like a wrestler. And she's an extraordinary warrior. She trains warriors. She's very militaristic. She's very by the book, trained warrior, and that's what she does. Where Mariel's acrobatic and unusual with her battle moves. She just does things in the moment, and it's throws people off because none of it's normal stuff, that people do with a sword and shield, but she doesn't. And Mariel's very unapologetic. She does what she does, Mariel, and she doesn't care what people think about it. Ingrid, as huge as she is, she's very self-conscious about her appearance. She's very masculine looking, and that puts people off. She finds it hard to really forge bonds with people because of that. It's a psychological thing she's got. So I had fun writing her. She, like I say, she's in book 4, Runes of Revenge. She's extraordinary in her own right. Then you've got Josephine Peel, of course, coming up, who's very different than all of them, and it's kind of shocking how different she really is. But it was great. It was very enjoyable, and for some reason, I just gravitated to strong female roles. I don't know. I just root for them.
And what point of view are we getting here? Is this a first person point of view to the stories, or are you writing third person?
Third person. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah.
Most historical and fantasies are, so, but I always like to ask.
Yeah, in the way it's still third person, but it depends on who the character is at the time. I might focus the what I relate to the reader based on what that character knows at the time. So, but it is
Right.
always third person. Yeah,
Yeah, I think they call it like close third person or something like that. I don't know. There's a name for it, but
probably. Yeah, I'm not sure either.
so you said this started with a short story. Were you an author or a writer before this series?
Well, I started out as technical writing. I always dabbled with creative writing, but I never did anything I thought I was going to try to actually publish and show other people. I just wrote it for me. Poetry, some, just short stories, usually ghost stories, things like that, just supernatural. A lot of uh, alternate history type stories that of eras that interest me, but I never really wanted to push to actually publish it. It was just something I did for fun. But I did do a lot of technical writing and things for companies I've worked for, and that's kind of where most of my writing happened itself. But for some reason, when I saw that thing about the burial mound and it was a female leader, chieftain of some kind that was buried in this burial mound, that just sparked my interest in going back to the creative side. And I wrote an outline for Mariel, wild this wild badass female Viking warrior, and I just started adding to it, adding to it, adding to it. Then I started putting more interest that I have into it, and it became 8 books and
Wow.
spinoffs coming. So yeah, it was
Right.
great.
And how do you keep up with all of these storylines? Do you have like a huge poster or do you have a file or how does this work?
Believe it or not, and I think I mentioned this on one of Amy's Ravichandran's on podcast that I was on before, is Excel spreadsheet.
Okay.
And I do a timeline on it. I don't necessarily keep notes on every character. They're pretty well formulated in my head, and I don't have to really write it down per se. But I do have to keep track of events and when people were born, when they died, things like that. Because this is, like I say, this is over 1,200 years. Not every minute of that 1,200, of course, but in times over that 1,200 years. So I got to keep track of, how many generations have gone by, who is whose grandmother, that sort of thing. So I put it on an Excel spreadsheet, which is pretty extensive at this point, and I put a lot of the major events that have happened in each book on the line with that year, so I can keep track of it. But yeah, I use a little bit of technology.
Well, yeah, no, I've talked to several authors who use Excel spreadsheets for to keep track of everything, especially when they have series. And I
Hmm.
think it really helps your editors too, because they can quickly go back and check something to make sure everything's congruent and right, and you didn't mess
Exactly.
up.
Yep.
Because readers don't really like when you do that. So,
No, yeah, me and my editor, Andrea, have talked about that many times. I've always hated continuity errors in books or movies or anything that I've read or watched on TV or whatever. And I made big strives not to have those in mind. If I'm gonna complain about it, I can't do it too. So I had
yeah.
to find ways to I had to find ways to make sure I didn't do that. So yeah, it is very important.
Yeah, I was just talking to another author this week and they were like, "Oh, breaking your own magic rules is their top thing that they hate." So they're like,
Oh
if
yeah,
you
yeah.
break a magic rule, if you make a rule and then you break it in your own book, I'm gonna stop reading it." And I'm like,
And I mean, and there's some logic to that. I tend to
yeah.
agree because
And when you like some authors will do like all the books in the series and then release them, right? So you have control over making sure you don't do that, right? But I don't do that. Like I just write one and release it and write another and release it. So there have been times that I've been like, dang, I can't do that because I'm breaking this rule. And then you have to figure out another way to make whatever happen in the story. So
and
yeah.
and the really cool part, and you probably feel the same way, I believe. The cool part about that is it makes you flex your brain a little bit more because you can't take the easy way out. You've already done it. You can't undo it now. So
Right.
now
And
you
it's
got to
really
find an
fun.
alternative route to get there,
Right.
and usually it ends up being a hell of a lot more creative than what you were going to do to start with. So it's actually a good thing.
Yeah, it is. It's really fun when you like finally figure out how to make it work
Hmm.
with the rules of your world. So yeah, that's the fun part of writing to me, definitely.
Oh, absolutely. Making things work in a believable way.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I had this spell on my witches where they couldn't go more than 100 miles, but then he had to go like halfway across the globe. And I was like, oh, okay, let's see. How are we going to get around? How are we going to like undo this in it? Yeah, I figured
There,
it out, but
yeah, there's
yeah,
always a way.
I
There's
thought it
always
was
a
a
way.
really cool way. I don't know that anybody else noticed, but anyway. So yeah, so you're going to live in this world for a while then.
Oh yeah, I don't see any firm ending in sight because on I call it on the board, on my little board, theoretical board that where I have ideas floating around. There's a potential for this. I do want to end the main series. I feel like I've gotten to the point if I keep going, it's going to get too drawn out and too watered down. So it's time to end that story. But I have dozens and dozens and dozens of interesting characters to keep continuing with their stories. And I have at least, if I pursue them all, which I don't know that I will, I am doing the Cameron series, though, with Josephine. I've already committed to that. But there's at least 5 or 6 more I could do that I've already gotten ideas about and how to proceed with those. And a lot of them some of them will be brand new characters that are connected to the main series, but a lot of them are also uh, characters from the main series, and it shows what they do after all that's over. They still have a life to live. What happens now?
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, this sounds super fun. And I think you're right. Like, I've read series that are like 13, 15 books long, and sometimes they just like go off the rails and spin into something that wasn't even
Yeah.
like in the main story before, and you're like, how did I get here? So
Well,
yeah,
I
I
mean,
think that's a good way to do it.
we're kind of adrenaline junkies. I think you'll agree, right? I mean, the first book does well, everyone's happy, you get a lot of accolades, and now you want to make the next one even better, and then the next one even better, and the next one even better. You don't want to go backwards, so you keep coming up with more outlandish stuff, and there's a point where it just becomes too much, and you turn off your reader. That's my
Maybe,
opinion now. Maybe I'm
maybe
wrong,
that's
but
it. Maybe that's what happens. Yeah, I don't know. And of course, it's kind of scary I was just putting that in an interview. Like, it's kind of scary when you finish something and somebody really likes it, then you're like, oh, wow, the next thing has to be better. I mean, like,
exactly.
it could be I'm going to tell myself that it could be just as good. So I keep writing.
That's right. As long as you're not going backwards.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Bjorn, for being here. Tell everyone where we can find you in your books.
Well, the books are available on Amazon, of course. You can look up, you could do the search Thalsparr, and that'll bring up the whole series of 6, including the pre-order book that's out now, but it'll be released in September 16th. On Facebook, you can just type in Bjorn Leesson, Leesson. There's not many of them. In fact, I think I'm the only one, so it won't be hard to find it. I put almost all the updates about the series on there. I give updates. I try to give updates on everything once a month. So you get to see not just the next book coming out or the ones that are already out. You get to see what I'm planning. Like the Cameron series is listed on there. All the potential other books that I may or may not write are on there. I just, whatever's in my brain, I put it out there for the reader. The main website where you can find kind of the hub for all this is thalsparr.com, Thalsparr.com. And that's pretty much the best places to find everything. Yeah.
Great. Well, I hope you'll come back when you release your next book so we can find out what's happening with Muriel and Josephine and Ingrid, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Those are the big 3.
Well, thank you again, Bjorn, and have a great night.
Thank you so much.
And bye.
Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Finding the Magic podcast. I'm your host, author and podcaster Tricia Copeland, and I love getting behind the scenes. If you like the podcast, make sure to subscribe and stop in each week to discover new authors and books. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep finding the magic.